Hello, welcome or welcome back. My name is Ari and today you are watching my May TBR. So for those of you who aren't familiar with my channel, I do have a couple of different sections to my TBR. First is the Dungeon of Books. I'm gonna play this lovely game that is totally fucking with the white balance on my camera right now, but I'm gonna play this game, roll a d20, pick out 5 books or more because it hates me, and let you know what those books were. Next, I have a monthly theme that I theme my reading around. After that is my yearly challenges, personal yearly challenges things, which are the Buzzwordathon created by Kayla at Books and Lala, and the book covered athon, which is basically the same thing as Buzzwordathon, different in prompts, and that was created by Caitlin, and I can't remember her channel name, but I'm gonna have it on the screen right now because I'm an asshole and names are not my thing. And after that, we'll talk Dritz and Shannara. So first and foremost, before I roll, let's talk about the books that I pulled last month. So last month I rolled 2 doubles and ended up with 7 rolls total. I told you I'm cursed. For the first roll, I needed to read a book under 300 pages, and I read Men Explain Things to Me by Rebecca Solnit. I read it, it's good. Next, I rolled a book that is an other genre. I have 6 genres on my board, so it needs to not be classic, nonfiction, fantasy, sci-fi, horror, or thriller. So any genre outside of that. And for that I read The Girl You Left Behind by Jojo Moyes. Next is a book over 500 pages. For that, it's upside down. That's classy. For that, I was supposed to read Empire of Storms. I have not started this yet, but there's still 2 months left or 2 weeks left in the month. So I have plenty of time to get to this. I just haven't yet, but I promise I'm gonna read it before the end of the month. I'm not worried about not reading it. Next up, for roll number 5, I needed to read a book that I did not want to read, and that was a book selected out of this jar of books that I own from book boxes mostly, and I have no interest in reading. So yeah, I don't even get to choose which book I don't want to read. The jar chooses for me. For that, I read The Lonely Hearts Hotel by Heather O'Neill. I did DNF this. It's within my rules that I'm allowed to DNF this, but it's off my list because I at least attempted to read it. Next up was another book that I didn't want to read, also pulled from the jar, and for that I read Burning Midnight by Will McIntosh. And the final roll was a book by a BIPOC author. For that I read, or I haven't read it yet. For that I picked Saarland by River Solomon. I have not gotten to this, but again, there's 2 weeks left in the month. I could get 2 books done in 2 weeks. I have plenty of time. I just had to put on makeup today for something and didn't want to waste the recording time. So yeah, I will get to both Empire of Storms and Sorrowland 100% before the end of the month. There is no stress there. So without further ado, let's get into this month's rolls. Roll number 1 is a 19. There we go. The first roll, as you just saw, was a 19, and that is a book by a BIPOC author. And that book is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. Chloe Gong is an Asian author, so she's BIPOC. This is a fantasy Romeo and Juliet retelling that has to do with rival gangs. And I've heard great things about the premise, but not so great things about the book, so I'm a little skeptical going into this, but I haven't heard such bad things that I don't want to read it at all anymore. So we'll see. Maybe this is really good. Roll number 2 is a 6, I think. And the tiebreaker roll is a 15. For the next roll, I rolled a 6, and then the tiebreaker on that was a 15. So if it was under a 10, it would have been a book in a series. Because it's over 10, it's a standalone book. And for that, I am going to read The Glass Count Game by Catherine Valenti, I think is how you say her name. This book I have absolutely fuck all interest in. This, I think, follows the Bronte children, like the famous writer women Brontes, as children, and like a game that they made up where they created a universe called the Glass Town. I don't know. It sounds absolutely stupid, but I want to get this book off my shelf, so I'm gonna try to read it. We'll see. Roll number 3 is a 4. There you go. And the tiebreaker on that is a 12. Next up was a 4, which is an even number, so it's a tiebreaker. It's either a classic or a non-fiction, and I rolled a 12, or I guess I should have said it's a non-fiction or a classic, and I rolled a 12, so that's a classic. And for that, I am reading Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. This book has been recommended to me a lot of times because I like really fucked up dark stories. And apparently this is really fucked up and dark, but I've also heard that it's fucked up and dark in a way that I won't like. So I'm iffy about going into it. I think I put this on my list on one of my 5-star predictions for the year, but before Deidre Drake, an author that I talked to on social media, she said that I don't think you're gonna like that because it's really rapey, so I guess we'll find out. Roll number 4 is a 13. Next roll was a 13, and it's other genre. So this is a book that is not one of the 6 genres that I have on my board, which means it can't be a classic, it can't be nonfiction, it can't be fantasy, sci-fi, thriller, or horror. So those are the main genres that I personally read, so it's gonna be something outside of that. So I'm going with like a contemporary, maybe women's lit. I don't actually know what this category is. This is a category that I consider general fiction, and that is The Last Story of Mina Lee by Nancy Juyoon Kim. And this follows a girl named Mina who, I think she was taught to be a thief at a young age, and she is feeling back. Hey, editing me interrupting here. Whatever the fuck I just said is a completely different book. This is an immigration story where a woman discovers her mother has died after her mother is not returning her calls, and it's a dual timeline story. Roll number 5 is a 3. Unfocused. There we go. 3. And the final roll, no doubles this month, thank God, was something on my Goodreads Choice TBR. So every year I read at least 2 books in almost every category, just to kind of see like maybe the Goodreads Choice Awards did really good with who they nominated or who won, or maybe this is it. Those books suck and it's just a popularity contest. So I always read the winners of each category and then at least one other book that sounds interesting to me as a comparison. And one of the categories that I still need to read and have no desire to read the winner at all is the memoir and autobiography category, and for that I'm reading The Promised Land by Barack Obama. And I don't know how I could put this across that I fucking hate politics, like in general. There are political subjects that I am passionate about, like rights for people, like women's rights, queer rights, trans rights, BIPOC rights, like those things I care about. What happened in the middle of Barack Obama's presidency for 700 pages? I don't honestly give a fuck. So I'm not looking forward to reading this. I am going to get this on audiobook because that's about the only way that I can figure I could probably make it through this, because if I have to read this, I'm gonna die. So I'm just gonna turn it on and listen to it while I'm working and hope for the best. And that is it for the Dungeon of Books portion of this TBR, but there's more. There's more. So first is the monthly theme. This month's theme is book-only book boxes. So you guys probably know that I unbox a lot of book boxes on this channel, just kind of like experimenting and seeing if they're worth it. And 4 of the book boxes that I either currently get or have previously gotten only contain the book, and those don't get featured as much on my channel as the ones where I'm like digging through all the goodies. So I'm gonna take this month to dedicate a week each to reading books from those book boxes and then letting you know if the book box is worth it. So the first week is going to be Brilliant Books Monthly, which is a personalized subscription from an indie bookstore. I gave them a bunch of information, filled out a bunch of questionnaires, and they sent me 6 books over 6 months of things that they thought that I would like based off of what I've told them. And I've read a couple of them. I haven't read all of them. They also allow you to return the books if it's something you already owned. So I have more than 6. I think I had like 8 with the ones that I returned, because they were books that I already owned. So I'd either read them already or just already wanted to read it. So with those, I am going to read all of it, all of the ones that I got, and then let you know if was that worth it? Did they match my personality? Like all of that fun stuff. The next box is a box called YA Book Club. This is a defunct box. It doesn't exist anymore, but I have a lot of books that I don't want to read on my TBR or on my shelves that came from that box. I don't really know why. This was like one of the very, very first book boxes I ever signed up for, like ever. And at that time I thought I liked YA a lot more than I actually do, and I don't. And I don't particularly care for reading YA, so that week is mostly like, let's get a lot of these off of my TBR. And even if you are interested in that box, it doesn't exist anymore, so you can't do it. Next is the Book of the Month Club, and if you saw the Dungeons of Books, a couple of those books had the little Book of the Month Club little logo on that. I did that on purpose. One of them was also from the YA Book Club book box that I don't want to read. But yeah, Book of the Month Club is a very, very popular service where you get to pick your own book. You pay $15 a month. You get to pick a new release, usually hardcover book. They give you like a list of them every month, and then you can add on up to 2 additional books for $10 after that. And getting a new release hardcover for $15 is like half the price you would normally pay for it. So it's a really cool box, and if you're not interested in the books, you can skip it, but it's not like every single book in existence is on there. You only have like a limited amount. So my thought is like, hey, is this worth it for me as a reader based off of my taste of reading, which leans heavily towards fantasy and sci-fi? You'll find out that week. And then the final week, I have a newer book box called the Sci-Fi Book Club. This honestly might be by the same people who did the Young Adult Book Club because everything looks similar, but I don't know for sure. And they just send you 2 sci-fi books every month. This is a new to me subscription. I've gotten it for about 3 months, and I've read, I want to say 1 or 2 of the books out of there so far. Not a whole lot, but at least I've read something. So I'm going to read a couple of those and then let you know. Was it worth it? Is it any good? Should you sign up for this? I'll give more details in the individual weekly vlogs for each of those book boxes. So follow, subscribe. You don't follow on YouTube. Subscribe if you want to come back and see those. Next is the Buzzwordathon, and the buzzword for this month is either house or home in the title. For that, I am going to read Catherine House, who I don't remember who that's by, but this is one of my 5-star predictions for the year. I'm either gonna really love this or really hate it, because people seem to either really love or really hate this book. And it sounds like my type of thing, where it's an extremely unlikable main female character with a loose approximation of a plot. That sounds right up my alley. So I'm gonna read this for the Buzzwordathon because it's got house in the title. For book covered, we're doubling down on this one, and the prompt for that is a book with an illustrated cover. And when she says illustrated, I took that to mean, based on her examples, that something that is like not necessarily like a painted cover where it's like realistic looking, but it's a painting. This is something that actually looks like an illustration, not a painting, but an illustration. And for that, I am going to read The Glasstown Game by Catherine Valenti. This, to me, very much looks illustrated. Like, those look like illustrations. I could see a cartoon made out of this artwork. So that's what we're doing for that prompt. And last but not least, or maybe least, I don't know, the Shannara and Dritz. I have to change this up. I have been struggling so hard for the past 4 months to get through these Shannara books. So, and the Dritz books are great. I've had absolutely no issue with the Dritz books at all, but the Shannara books are a drag, and these series are going from like 2 to 3 books to like 4 to 5 books, and my reading is suffering from having to get through like 4 Shannara books a month, and then 4 or 5 Dritz books are fine, but that's just 4 or 5 extra books. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to alternate months going forward. So 1 month will be Shannara, the next month will be Dritz, Shannara, Dritz. So I'll have like a bad month of Shannara and then a good month of Dritz. If for some reason I like move ahead and maybe I really enjoyed the Shannara books that month, and then I have some extra time, so I start reading Dritz, or I blew through the Dritz books and so I'm gonna start reading Shannara, or maybe get through Shannara. I'm not gonna like limit myself where I'm only allowed to read 1 a month, but I'm going to change it to where the maximum I have to read is 1 a month. So for that, I am going, this was on last month's TBR. This is the Cleric Quintet, which is by R.A. Salvatore, which is the next series of Dritz books. This is a bind up, but this is 5 books in one, and it's a little over 1,000 pages. So this is the goal for next month, and then we'll go back into Shannara in June. But yeah, I still have 2 Shannara books to go, and I only have 2 weeks left of the month, just because I hate them so much right now, and I'm just not motivated to read it. And instead of trying to force myself to read something and not enjoying my reading experience, I'm just gonna put Dritz off until next month and then live a happy life. So that is everything. Let me know what you think about my TBR. down in the comments below. Have you read any of these books? Do you have any recommendations? Am I in for a good reading month, or am I in for a really bad reading month? I guess we'll find out at the end of the month wrap up. So if you want to see what I thought about these books, subscribe. Come hang out with me. I put out at least 2 videos a week, sometimes more, and I would love to see you in my comments. Bye.